They sold her for 12 million naira. But she became the one who held the keys to a kingdom. Because in a world that taught her to serve, she dared to see. In a world that said she was nothing, she became everything. Not by breaking the curse, but by breaking the lie that she had to be small to survive. At 16, Adaora had already learned the bitter truth that not all daughters are born into love. She rose every day before the first cock crowed. Her thin frame moved silently through the soot-filled kitchen, her bare feet padding across the cracked cement floor as she lit the firewood to boil water. Papa Uche, her father, never greeted her. Mama Neka only shouted orders. Her 5 brothers, Emeka, Nonso, Chuka, Somto, and Abuja, acted like she was invisible. Except when they were hungry or angry. While the boys wore clean school uniforms and carried books to class, Adaora stayed behind, armed with a mop, a bucket, and endless chores. She had never seen the inside of a classroom. Not once. When she begged to go to school at age 9, her mother slapped her so hard she bled from the nose. "Who will cook for your brothers if you're in school?" Mama Neka had snapped. "Who will scrub this compound?" Since then, Adaora had stopped asking, but she never stopped dreaming. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before the village woke, she would draw shapes in the ash on the kitchen floor letters she had secretly taught herself by peeking through windows at the school compound. No one noticed her, not on her birthdays, not when she was sick, not even when her fingers bled from scrubbing the concrete steps. Her mat, the one she slept on, was torn and always damp during rainy season. The corner of the house she called hers smelled of damp earth and smoke. Her meals were leftovers, often cold, and sometimes touched by flies. Her brothers got meat. She got bones if she was lucky. But somehow Adaora held on. In the loneliness, she whispered hope into the wind. Maybe Mama will smile at me today. Maybe Papa will say my name. Maybe they'll see me. She clung to those wishes like a drowning girl holding a log in a flooding river. Then one evening, everything shifted. Her eldest brother, Emeka, came home, holding his head and staggering. Mama ran to him, screaming. That night he vomited blood. By morning, he collapsed entirely. Papa Uche cradled him like he was a newborn. They rushed him to the health center. Neighbors followed. There were shouts, prayers, panic. Adaora stayed behind, alone, scrubbing the kitchen floor as instructed. Her heart pounded, not just from fear for her brother, but because she knew that in their house, pain always found its way back to her. That night, the compound was quiet. Then the news came. The doctor said it was a brain tumor. Emeka needed urgent surgery in Enugu. It would cost 12 million naira. 12 million naira, 12 million prayers, 12 million heartbeats. Papa Uche sat under the mango tree outside, silent. Mama Neka sobbed into her wrapper. The brothers no longer laughed. But Adaora knew deep down the storm that was coming wasn't just about the money. She had been the family's shadow her whole life, and now, when desperation knocked, she feared they would trade her like a forgotten coin. She was right. In a world that never saw her, Adaora became the currency of her family's survival. But what the world didn't know was that hidden beneath her silence was the heart that could break the oldest curse of all the curse of being unloved. The days that followed the hospital visit blurred into chaos. Panic turned to desperation. Papa Uche paced endlessly across the compound. Mama Neka visited every neighbor with soaked eyes and cracked hands, begging for help. The family sold the old motorcycle, then the radio, then Papa's favorite goat. Still, it wasn't enough. The local church prayed but gave nothing. The richest uncle in the family sent 5,000 naira and a scripture. Emeka grew weaker. His body became thin. His eyes turned gray. Then one night, as the Harmattan wind howled outside their clay house, Mama Nneka stood silently in the doorway of Adaora's corner. She said nothing for a long time, just stared. Then, in a tone as cold as charcoal ash, she whispered, "There's a man in Abuja, a rich man. He will give us the 12 million naira, but he wants a bride for his dog." Adaora blinked. "I don't understand," she said, though her stomach had already dropped. Her mother stepped forward. "He's offering the money, all of it, if you agree. Just sign. Go, marry it." "Marry a dog?" Adaora's voice cracked. "He's not ordinary. They say he's royal or cursed. No one knows. But who are we to ask questions when your brother is dying?" Adaora's breath caught in her throat. "Mama, I'm your child. You want to sell me? Like an animal?" Mama Nneka didn't blink. "You've eaten our food for 16 years. Now is your time to pay it back." Adaora's legs gave way. She slumped to the floor, shaking. "I am not a sacrifice." But to her mother, she wasn't a daughter. She was a solution. The next morning, Papa Uche called a family meeting. Adaora was told to kneel before them, like a criminal. "This is not a discussion," he said sternly. "You are going to Abuja." "Why not one of the boys?" she cried. He slapped her before she could finish. "Because you are the least. That man is doing us a favor." Her brothers said nothing. Some avoided her eyes, and others smirked. Then a black car arrived. The air turned thick. The dust didn't rise. It settled like the silence in Adaora's heart. A man in a gray suit stepped out. He didn't greet her. He greeted her father. "This the girl?" he asked. "She is," Papa Uche replied proudly. "Our Adaora. Healthy, obedient." Adaora stood like stone as the man examined her, like a goat in the market. He handed her father a thick envelope. Papa Uche counted the money with trembling fingers. 12 million. Not for a car, not for land, for a daughter. The man turned to Adaora. "Come." No goodbye, no blessing, no tears. Mama Nneka gave her a torn bag with her old wrappers inside and said, "Don't disgrace us. Do what you must." The car door closed. The compound faded behind her. She looked back once. No one was standing outside. No one watched her leave. She had been born into a family that never named her value until it came with a price tag. And now she was being driven into the unknown, not for love, not for choice, but because in a world like hers, a girl's worth was only what someone was willing to pay. The journey from Oji River to Abuja was long and silent. Adaora sat in the back seat, arms wrapped around her bag like it was her last shield. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Even her tears had gone numb. The man in the suit never spoke, not a single word. As the dusty outskirts gave way to the polished roads of the city, the air changed, from hot to cold, from real to surreal. They passed mansions, embassies, and estates wrapped in gates taller than trees. Then the car turned down a hidden road lined with flame trees and whispering shadows. At the end of the road, towering golden gates stood still as though they had been asleep for 100 years. They opened slowly without a driver's touch. Adaora's breath caught in her throat as the car rolled through. Ahead, wrapped in marble and moonlight, was a mansion larger than anything she had ever seen. It shimmered with elegance and something else, something ancient. Inside the estate, everything glowed, floors polished like mirrors, walls lined with tall golden mirrors, chandeliers that looked like frozen stars. The silence was eerie. Even the air felt enchanted. Adaora's bare feet sank into velvet rugs as she was led down the endless hallway. They stopped before massive double doors. "He is waiting," the man said. The doors opened. Adaora stepped inside and froze. There, on a raised velvet cushion, sat the dog. Or rather, the beast. His fur was snow-white, his body tall, regal, unnaturally still. A golden chain collar glimmered against his neck. But it was his eyes that rooted Adaora to the spot blue like the deepest ocean, but filled with something terribly human. He stared at her, unblinking, unmoving. Then slowly he stood, majestic, quiet, terrifying in his calmness. Adaora wanted to scream, but some force held her tongue. The man beside her bowed. "Master Zubair, your bride has arrived." The beast's eyes stayed locked on Adaora's. No growl, no bark, only silence, a silence heavier than thunder. "Bow," the man whispered to Adaora. "Show respect." She turned to him in disbelief. "To a dog?" His face was blank. "To your husband." Her knees trembled, but instinct or fear took over. She knelt, slowly, eyes down. When she looked up again, the beast had moved closer. He circled her once. His paws were silent on the velvet. He sniffed, not in hunger, but in curiosity. Then he nodded. The man smiled. "He accepts you." Two silent maids appeared. Without a word, they led her away from the chamber and into a bedroom unlike anything Adaora had ever imagined. Gold, everywhere. A chandelier glowed like warm honey above a bed draped in silk. The mirror stretched wall to wall. Velvet curtains fell like waterfall fabric. It looked like a princess's chamber. But Adaora was not a princess. She was a prisoner. The door clicked shut, locked. She ran to it, tugged. No escape. The window sealed, the glass thick. Outside, the night hung like a spell. She collapsed on the bed. Her tears finally fell silent, hot, bitter. "What is this place?" she whispered. "What do they want from me?" No answer came. Only the faint howling of the wind, or perhaps the beast somewhere deep in the mansion's heart. That night, Adaora didn't sleep. She watched the shadows dance across her room. She clutched her knees like they were the last pieces of herself. But deep inside, something stirred. Not just fear. Something else. A question that refused to die. Why me? And from the golden mirror on the wall, something watched her back. This was no ordinary marriage. This was no ordinary mansion. And the beast was no ordinary dog. The curse had chosen her. Now her story, and his, had truly begun. Adaora hadn't slept. She had watched the gold-framed mirrors shimmer all night, catching faint glimmers that didn't feel like reflections. Her silk sheets were too soft to feel real. The silence in the mansion didn't comfort it, pressed in like a question with no answer. Then came a soft knock. Not loud, not forceful, just respectful. The door opened slowly, and in stepped a young woman. She wore a crisp black and white uniform, carried a silver tray, and had the kind of eyes that had seen too much. Her face was calm, too calm. "Good morning," she said gently. "My name is Halima. I've come to explain the rules." Adaora sat up, unsure if she should speak, run, or cry again. Halima placed the tray on the small gold table beside the bed, hot bread, fruit, and spiced tea. "There are 3 rules you must never break," Halima said softly. She stood straight, hands folded, voice smooth as glass. "Never leave your room without permission. Never try to run away. Never disobey the master." Adaora swallowed. "The master?" Halima nodded once. Prince Subaya. Adaora blinked. The dog? Silence. Then a faint, tired smile from Halima. He was not always a dog. The words hung in the air like perfume laced with poison. Adora's heart beat faster. What does that mean? Halima stepped closer, lowering her voice. This house was once a palace of light. It is now a cage of memory. And its master is not what he seems. She sat beside Adaora and looked toward the mirror as if expecting it to speak. Long ago, Prince Subaya ruled with pride. But pride without mercy draws curses like ants to sugar. She explained how a powerful sorceress had cursed him not with death, but with something worse. To live trapped in the body of a beast, surrounded by the silence of his own sorrow. He has been like this for many years, Halima whispered. And many girls have been brought here hoping their love might break the spell. Adaora's eyes widened. Love? Yes, that is the only key. Not pity, not duty. Love pure, willing, real. Adaora shook her head. But why me? I was sold. I don't love him. I don't even know him. Halima stood slowly, her face softened. And yet, he chose you. Chose me, Adaora's voice cracked. No one has ever chosen me. Halima turned at the door. That is what makes you different. And with that she left, leaving Adaora staring at the untouched food, the glowing mirror, and the quiet madness of a world where marriage meant mystery and freedom came with chains. That evening, she heard distant footsteps, not heavy, not human, just steady. Then silence again. The walls of the mansion whispered with life. Candles flickered in corridors without wind. Mirrors blinked with golden sparks. And somewhere, deep within, the beast waited, not as a predator, but as a prisoner. Adaora lay awake that night, thinking of all the girls who came before her, who had failed, who had run, who had screamed. And she wondered, what makes me different? She didn't know the answer yet. But in the golden shadows of her locked room, the enchanted house leaned closer like it was watching her too. The mansion was not merely cursed. It was waiting for her heart to decide. Would she be the final girl to flee? Or the first one to stay? Adaora woke to the scent of roses. Not the dry, distant kind found in village perfumes, but real, thick, blooming roses, sweet, overwhelming, and alive. She opened her eyes and for a moment forgot the mansion, the curse, and the chain around her fate. Then came the soft knock. Halima entered, holding something unusual, a dress the color of sky after rain, soft silk, tiny pearls stitched into the sleeves. The master wishes to walk with you today, she said gently. In the garden, he asked that you wear this. Adaora blinked. He asked? Halima nodded. He does not speak to most, but he asked for you. Minutes later, dressed in fabric that felt too elegant for her skin, Adaora stepped outside her room for the first time. The hallways whispered around her. Walls pulsed faintly. Paintings shifted when she passed. Staff moved like ghosts, never meeting her eyes, never speaking. She was guided through silver archways until the doors to the east garden opened. And there he was. Prince Subaya the Beast sat silently in a clearing of roses, ivory, crimson, deep gold. Flowers swayed, though there was no wind. He looked at her, and something passed between them. Not words, not fear. Recognition. She stepped forward cautiously. Her breath caught. He was beautiful, in a way that defied reason. You're afraid of me, a voice said, but not with her ears. Inside her mind, Adaora gasped and stumbled back. You can speak? Only to the one who can break the curse. The voice was deep but not harsh, measured, almost dead. They walked slowly among the roses, a strange pair, the girl who had been discarded, and the prince trapped in fur and silence. "You were not the first," Zubair said. "Many came. All ran." Adaora looked at him. "Why did you choose me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stopped beside a dark red rose, nearly black at the edges. "My mother planted this before she died. It was her favorite." His voice dropped. "I never told her goodbye." Adaora saw it then, the sorrow wrapped around him like invisible chains. She sat beside him on a stone bench. "What happened to you?" He turned his head slowly. "I was once a prince, powerful, arrogant. I destroyed what I could not understand. I mocked those who loved me. I broke the heart of a girl who gave everything. And I laughed as she cried." His voice cracked. "Her mother was a sorceress. She cursed me to become what I acted like a beast." Adaora remained quiet, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "You don't have to pity me," he added. "I don't," she said. "But I know what it feels like to be unloved." He turned to her. For the first time, the gaze was not of a prince studying a girl, but of one wounded soul recognizing another. "You're different," he said. Adaora lowered her eyes. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to break a curse," she whispered. "Sometimes, just staying is strength." They sat in silence. The breeze stirred petals. One floated gently between them, red, soft, perfect. And for the first time since she arrived, Adaora didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt seen. In a garden full of dead hopes, a beast told his truth, and a forgotten girl dared to listen. Neither knew what they were healing, but something ancient stirred among the roses, something waiting to bloom. The following days passed like chapters from a dream Adaora never asked to enter. Each morning, Halima arrived with a fresh dress, soft-spoken words, and a strange calmness, like a woman living between two worlds. And each morning, Zubair waited in the rose garden. There was no force, no command, just presence. At first, Adaora kept a distance. She sat quietly on the far end of the bench while Zubair rested in the flowers. They didn't always speak, but even in silence something grew, a rhythm, a peace. It started subtly. The candles in the hallways, once dim, began to glow with a warm golden light whenever Adaora passed. The library door, once tightly sealed, opened on its own one afternoon as she walked by. Inside were books that whispered, turned pages themselves, and shelves that rearranged to display stories about broken rulers, cursed love, and lost queens. Even the paintings on the walls shifted. The eyes in the portraits followed her with something like hope. Halima noticed. "The house is awakening," she said, watching the chandelier pulse above them. "It's been silent for years, but since your arrival it's begun to breathe again." Adaora stared at her. "It's just me. I'm nobody." Halima shook her head. "You're more than you know." In the garden, Zubair listened as Adaora spoke, at first hesitantly, then freely. She told him of her mat on the floor, the time she was slapped for asking to go to school, the meals she never finished, the birthdays no one remembered. Zubair never interrupted. "You didn't deserve that," he said quietly. Simple words. But they wrapped around Adaora's aching chest like a warm cloth. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. And yet, here was a beast, a fallen prince, listening to her pain with more care than her own parents had ever shown. She didn't cry that day. But that night, When she lay on her velvet bed, she did not out of sorrow, but out of being seen. One morning she walked into the grand dining room and gasped. The long wooden table, polished to a mirror shine, was set for two. Candlelight danced from floating orbs above. Platters of roasted plantain, jollof rice, and warm okra stew filled the air with home-like aromas. Zubair was seated at the head of the table. "Will you join me?" he asked softly. Adaora nodded. "I would like that." At first they ate in silence, but then Adaora laughed as she told him how she once hid her brother's school uniform so she could pretend it was hers. "That's not funny," Zubair growled gently. "You should have been in school." His tone was stern, but his eyes were kind. Adaora smiled. "Maybe one day I'll learn to read here, if your books don't float away before I catch them." Zubair tilted his head. "I'll teach you, if you let me." After the meal, Zubair's voice changed. "There's something I need to show you." He led her through a passage behind the library, narrow, dim, lit by flickering golden sconces. At the end stood a door made of glass that shimmered like liquid gold. Inside was a single rose, large, luminous, floating in the air. Its petals shimmered with flecks of light, and a pulse of life beat softly within it. "This," Zubair said, "is the heart of the curse." He lowered his head. "When the last petal falls, I will remain like this forever." Adaora stared at the rose, entranced. "So it's not just about someone loving you," she whispered. "It's about whether you can be loved completely." Zubair nodded. "And whether I can be worthy of it." In that chamber of quiet, golden light, two truths stood side by side. A girl once discarded, and a prince once cruel. And between them a rose that counted not time, but the courage to open one's heart. Adaora couldn't sleep. She sat by the wide glass window in her golden room, staring at the moonlight washing over the hills. In her lap sat a book from the enchanted library, one that whispered when she touched it. It was titled, "The Curse of the Forgotten Prince." She opened it slowly, fingers trembling. The pages glowed faintly as she read, not just words, but memories, painful, regretful, magical. It told the story of a prince beloved by many, feared by more, and humbled by none. A woman had once loved him truly, but he laughed at her, discarded her, and spat on her name. Her mother, a powerful sorceress, cloaked in rags, cursed him not to die but to suffer as a beast, until someone saw his soul and chose him still. Only the purest love, freely given and without condition, from a heart that has known deep pain, can shatter the beast's form. Adaora's hands shook. This wasn't just a legend. It was Zubair. And now she was part of the story. Unable to sit still, Adaora wandered through the mansion halls, now softly illuminated by floating lanterns that followed her like fireflies. She found Zubair in the east garden, lying beneath the sycamore tree. His white fur shimmered in the moonlight, but he looked heavy, tired. He didn't startle when she approached. "I didn't want to wake you," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "Too many stories in my head." Zubair nodded. "This house remembers every story, even the ones we try to forget." Adaora sat beside him in the grass, the hem of her nightdress brushing the dew. "You said the rose was your heart," she whispered. "Does it feel pain, too?" Zubair looked at her. His blue eyes were luminous, almost glowing. "Yes. Every time I push someone away, every time someone looks at me with fear, every time someone calls me monster." He turned his gaze to the stars. "But tonight, it's beating." Adaora swallowed. Her own heart thudded in her chest. "Zubair," she said softly, "if you could go back, would you change who you were?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes, because power without kindness is just cruelty dressed in gold." Adaora stood suddenly. Her bare feet pressed into the cool grass. "Then show me," she said. "Not with words, with something real." He tilted his head. "Show you what?" She held out her hand. "Dance with me." Zubair froze. "Blessing," he said, using her name like it was sacred. "I don't look like someone you dance with." Adaora smiled through the trembling lips. "I didn't ask what you look like. I asked if you'd dance." Slowly, so slowly, he placed his paw in her hand. It was large, heavy, fur-covered. But she didn't flinch. The garden responded instantly. Lights rose from the soil like stardust. The roses bloomed wider, their colors glowing. Music drifted on the breeze, soft, haunting, orchestral. No instruments, no source, just magic. They moved slowly, awkwardly at first, a girl and a beast. But as they swayed beneath the sycamore tree, something unspoken passed between them, a rhythm older than curses and deeper than form. Zubair bowed his head. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me." Adaora met his gaze. "Thank you for being the first person who ever truly saw me, too." And in that moment, soft, unglamorous, real, something cracked. Not loudly, but deeply. The dance was not a spell. It was a bridge. And across it, two wounded souls took their first real steps toward freedom. Adaora stirred beneath the silk covers, her body warm with the memory of the garden, of Zubair's touch, of the music that came from nowhere, of the way her feet had moved like they belonged to someone brave. But something pulled her from sleep. Not sound, not scent, a presence. She opened her eyes. The full-length mirror on the wall, the one that always shimmered faintly, now pulsed with silver light. The surface rippled, as though it were no longer glass, but water suspended in magic. Then a face appeared. She was not human. Not exactly. Her hair flowed like silver rain, her skin glowed like moonstone, and her eyes, they were both kind and terrible at once, ancient, watching. "Adaora," the voice echoed. Not from the mirror, not in the room, but from within her. Adaora gasped and stepped back. Who are you?" "I am the guardian of this place, the one who watches between worlds." "Did you curse him?" she asked softly. The woman smiled gently. "No, I am the one who ensures the curse is kept true, that it is not broken by accident, fear, or deception. Only by love." Adaora's voice shook. "I was sold. I didn't come here to save anyone." The woman's face softened. "And yet here you are. And the rose beats again. The house breathes. Zubair speaks. You were discarded by the world. But in your pain, something rare was born, a heart that sees clearly. Not just through eyes, but through spirit." The mirror shimmered again, and scenes flashed. Adaora crying as her mother zipped up the bag of her old wrappers. Adaora scrubbing floors, unnoticed, unfed. Adaora kneeling before a beast and standing to dance with him anyway. "What others called weakness," the oracle said, "is your greatest strength. Your compassion is not small. It is a force. It awakens magic, long forgotten." Tears welled in Adaora's eyes. "I don't know if I can love him," she whispered. "You don't have to know yet," the guardian replied. "You only have to choose not to run." The oracle's expression turned serious. "But beware. The mansion is not the only thing that senses change. Magic awakens both light and darkness. The final test is coming. Not with fire or fangs, but with a question of truth. When it comes, do not listen only with your ears. The mirror began to dim. Adaora stepped forward. Will I be free if I break the curse? The guardian's final whisper came like wind through trees. You are always free, Adaora. You just needed someone to remind you. Then the mirror turned to glass again, silent, still but somehow different. Adaora sat on the bed, staring at her reflection. For the first time, she didn't see a servant, or a sacrifice, or a forgotten girl. She saw a bridge between two worlds, between curse and healing, between beast and man, between love and fear. And deep within her chest, her heart whispered, stay, not because you were sold, but because you choose to see what others can't. Some curses bind the body, others chain the soul. But the rarest magic of all is love that sees clearly and stays. The house was quieter than usual, not cold, not lifeless, but watchful, as though the mansion itself was holding its breath. Adaora walked slowly down the curved marble staircase that led to the secret room. The golden candlelight shimmered over her skin. Her gown, soft blue silk, flowed behind her like a whisper. She could feel it. The moment had come. When she reached the glass-walled chamber, the golden rose hovered in the air, pulsing faintly a heartbeat that was slowing. 3 petals remained. And beside it stood Zubair. He didn't turn to her at first. He was staring at the rose, his shoulders heavy, his head lowered. It's almost time, he said. Adaora stepped forward, her bare feet echoed against the cool floor. Can it still be broken? She asked. Yes, he said, but not with magic, not with mercy. Only with something freely given, without force, without fear. He looked at her then, not as a beast, but as a man trapped inside grief. Adaora, I would never ask you to love me out of pity. You owe me nothing. She stepped closer. But what if I already do? She asked quietly. Zubair's eyes glistened. He said nothing. She looked at the rose, then back at him. They told me the curse was on you, she whispered. But I think the curse was on me, too. He tilted his head. How so? Adaora's voice shook. I believed I wasn't worth love, that I was just a burden, a servant, a girl no one would ever choose. I let myself believe I deserved the scraps of life. But being here, with you, her voice cracked. You listened, you waited, you saw me, not as property, not as a problem, but as a person. You were the first person to ask me what I wanted, and I realized what I want is to stay. Not because I have to, but because my heart is no longer afraid. A single petal drifted from the golden rose. Now only 2 remained. Zubair lowered his head. Are you sure? Adaora stepped forward, reached for his paw, and held it gently. I'm not a fairy tale, she said. And you're not a monster. You're a man who hurt and was hurt. But you're learning to be different. So am I. The light in the room shimmered. The rose pulsed brighter. And then the last petal fell, or so it seemed. Until the rose caught itself mid-drop, hovered, and glowed brighter than ever, golden, blinding, humming with power. A wind surged through the chamber, lifting Adaora's hair, wrapping around them both like 1,000 hands unbinding an invisible rope. Zubair gasped. It's happening. His body began to glow, a radiant blue light swirling around him. His fur shimmered, shifted, his form trembled. And then silence. Where the beast had once stood, now knelt a man. Tall, dark-skinned, handsome, humble. His eyes still the same sorrowful, deep blue. He looked up at Adaora, breathless. Is it really you? He asked. She reached for him. It's always been me. The girl your curse was waiting for. They embraced. No music played. No trumpets sounded. But the mansion exhaled, doors opened, candles brightened. Windows flung themselves open to let in sunlight. Halima smiled quietly from a hallway corner. And in the mirror upstairs, the oracle watched silently, her silver hair glowing, her lips curling into a soft, satisfied smile. The curse has been broken, she whispered. But more importantly, a girl found her voice, and a prince remembered his heart. The beast was never just the curse. It was the silence of shame, the weight of pride, the lie that said love must look a certain way. But in the end, it was seen. And seeing freely, fearlessly became the truest magic of all. The curse was gone. But Adaora remained. She stayed not because she was bound, but because, for the first time in her life, she had the power to leave, and chose not to. Without the curse, the mansion changed. The halls filled with warm laughter. The books in the library whispered new stories, hers among them. The paintings on the walls now depicted Zubair and Adaora, not as beast and bride, but as two souls walking side by side. The rose chamber still glowed, but now gratitude, not warning. A memory, not a ticking clock. And the staff smiled again. Even Halima allowed herself to laugh. It's strange, Adaora told her one morning. The walls used to watch me. Now they feel like they're cheering. Halima nodded, a rare sparkle in her eye. Because you gave them something to believe in again. Zubair, now fully human, walked the mansion grounds each day with Adaora. He was quieter than most princes, humble, rebuilt. He didn't speak in commands, he asked. He didn't wear crowns. He wore apology, patience, and growth like armor. You don't have to stay, he told her one night under the sycamore tree. You're free. Adaora smiled. That's the point. I know. And still she stayed. But she also made a request. I want to learn, she said. To read. To write. To teach others like me girls the world forgets. Zubair took her hand. Then this house is no longer a cage. It's a school, a refuge, a sanctuary. For girls with hearts like yours. And so the mansion's east wing became the house of second chances. A place where discarded daughters learn not just letters, but value. Adaora stood at the front of the first classroom in a simple wrapper, chalk in hand, a warm breeze rolling through the windows. I was sold, she told the gathered girls. But I became priceless the day I saw myself. One evening, alone in her golden room, Adaora stood before the mirror. It shimmered faintly. No guardian appeared. No voice whispered. Instead, the mirror showed her as she truly was, a young woman with glowing skin, proud eyes, and a steady spine. Not a servant. Not a sacrifice. Not a bride. Not a savior. Just Adaora. Alive, chosen, free.